Hello and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire. Today I'm sharing how to create inner shadow box cards. Now this is a card design that's been around for many years, but I haven't shared in a video, so I thought I would do so today. So the way these cards work is they look normal on the outside, but when you open them, they form into a shadow box, and you can put any stamps and die cuts you want inside. I will show you how to create an inner shadow box card in both a top folding and side folding version. Here's a completed card so you can know what I'm trying to describe here. On the front it looks normal, but when you open it you can see a shadow box pops up. It fits nicely into a regular envelope and it really is easy to do. Now before I get into making one, I'm going to show you how you score the paper so that you can just see it done before we make some cards. It's easy to do. You start with an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock and you cut it in half at 5.5. This first version we're creating is the side folding version. So you have two pieces of cardstock here that are 5.5 by 8.5. Now we're going to use both of these for one card. With one of the pieces, we're going to score right down the middle. I'm using a Scor-Pal scoring board today because it makes scoring super easy, and I like to use a Teflon bone folder. It creases paper beautifully and doesn't leave any marks. So I put the paper in, and I'm going to score at 4.25. That's that mark that you see right there. And I'll just score right down the center. So basically, I am just creating a side folding note card. This is how I make regular note cards all the time. So now I can go ahead and fold along that score line, and there is our side folding note card. We do need to alter this a little bit for this technique. To do this, I am going to just cut off a 1/2 inch off of one side. So I'm just going to put it in my trimmer and cut it off. And there you can see we now have a note card where the back flap is a 1/2 inch shorter than the front. So that's all we have to do to that piece, and we'll set that one aside. Now we're going to take the other 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock, and we're going to do 3 score lines on this. We're going to score first at 1/2 inch, which you can see right here. So the first score line is right there. Then the second score line is at 4.25, just like we did on the last card. So that will score right here. Then the third score line will be at 4.75, which is the next one that I'll point to here. So 4.75 is the last score line that we have to do. And this will create the part of the card that pops up and forms a shadow box. So I'm just going to summarize it again. You score at a 1/2 inch, 4.25, and 4.75. You can take a screenshot here if you want to. Now that I've scored these, I'm just going to reinforce those scored lines using my bone folder. And you'll see after you fold on each score line, you actually create a box. You'll see when it kind of stands up here, it looks kind of like a box. That will be the inside of our card that pops up when you open it. There is one more thing I recommend doing to this piece. On that little 1/2 inch flap that we have here, I would cut off just a little sliver of cardstock. By doing this, the card goes together nicer and folds nicer when you put it in the envelope. So just trust me and cut a little sliver off that little 1/2 inch flap on this piece. Now this piece, as I said, is the one that goes inside of the card to create the shadow box. You need to create a window on the shadow box. In today's videos, I use the Hero Arts Nesting Infinity dies. I use the circle, oval, and rectangle, but any open dies would work. Now I'm first using the oval die. In the panel there where you need to do your die cut window and your stamping for the inside of the card is this one where I'm taping this die down. It's right next to that 1/2 inch flap. So I'm going to run that through my die cut machine, and then we will have our little window that will be inside of our shadow box. Now I'm going to assemble this card without anything on it, just to show you how it goes together. On that little 1/2 inch flap, I'm putting some strong double-sided tape. You want to use something very strong here because this will keep the card together. Here's our other piece where the back is a 1/2 inch shorter. Remember that one? Well, that will be the inside of the card. I'm going to put the edge of the one piece into the crease of our card, so it's going right up against the crease. Then I will close my card down onto it, pressing it into that adhesive. This looks complicated here, but I'll do it a few times in the video and you'll see it's very easy. So you can see the shadow box is about to be formed. Now we need to wrap that other panel over on the right over to the back of the card. So I'm flipping it all over, and I will put strong double-sided tape here also. So this will go to the back of the card and glue it all together. So I'm going to lay my card down flat, squish it all down, then fold this over. Just go along with the fold lines and press that down, and you'll be sure everything flattens nicely. And watch, when you open it, it pops open to the shadow box. So you can do any decorating you want to on these, and it is better to do the decorating before you assemble it. I just assembled it here to show you how it's done, so you can refer back to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a card with this particular side folding inner shadow box card. It really is easy to do and such a fun way to use your supplies. Today I am focusing on the new Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit for June. I'm a big fan of these kits and I use them in videos often. This is by far my favorite of the My Monthly Hero kits. It has these beautiful scenes for beach. It has some sand embossing powders, coordinating dyes, inks, and more. Now the nice thing about this is these layer together to create beautiful beach scenes, and I'm going to use them on most of today's cards. Notice in particular here on the left are 3 images that you layer together to create an ocean scene. I'll start with that. This first card has this ocean scene inside of the inner shadow box, and this is such a fun one to make. I'm using a MISTI stamping tool today simply because it makes stamping easier, but you can use an acrylic block. This is a piece of cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but we will have to trim this down to put inside of the card. I laid down my oval die just to kind of plan where I'm going to do my stamping. And I'm first stamping with the bottom layer of the waves. For this one, I'm stamping with Hero Arts Soft Pool ink. And I'm actually going to double stamp it just so it's a darker, more intense color. You could single stamp it and it would smooth out, but I wanted more of an intense color. Here's the second layer of the waves. It lines up very easy. I'm using Tide Pool ink. And then here is the third layer. For this one, I'm using Hero Arts Pool ink. And I'll actually stamp it once with Pool ink, decide that's a little too blue, so I'll go over it with Antigua ink. So you can layer up your inks to get different colors too. Okay, so now I decided I wanted to add a few more of the dark waves. So I cleaned off that third layer stamp, and I'm only inking up the top waves, not the bottom, just some of the waves at the top. And I'll stamp that so I could have more dark waves in my little ocean here. This makes me miss the beach so much. It's driving me crazy today, but I really enjoy these stamps. Next, we have these beautiful clouds. These are gorgeous. And I'm using 2 of the 3 clouds here. Now, I wanted a soft blue ink, so I'm stamping with Hero Arts Cornflower, which is a pretty bright color. But I'm going to stamp off first onto scrap paper, then stamp the second generation onto my panel here for a light blue. And look at that beautiful light blue that we end up with, super light. And I can save this cloud that I'm stamping on scrap paper for another project. Decided to do that twice just to make it a little bit darker, but there we have this beautiful soft cloud. Now I'm coming in with the second layer. There are 2 layers to the clouds. Lining that up, and this time I'll stamp with the Hero Arts Soft Sky ink. And you'll see these beautiful realistic clouds that you end up with. These clouds are also in that same Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit. We also have the little sailboat, and I'll stamp that one with Hero Arts Soft Granite ink, and also stamp some birds with the same ink. Now that we have the inside of our shadow box done, let's create the shadow box itself. As I did before, I'm scoring at a 1/2 inch, 4 1/4, and 4 3/4. This paper was 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 to start with. Exact same thing that I did earlier. I will fold along the 1/2 inch mark, then fold along the 4 1/4 and the 4 3/4. And before you know it, we have our little inside shadow box. Now on this first little panel here, we will do our die cut window. I'm going to use that oval die. tape that in place, and run it through my die cut machine. Now the stamped panel that we created for the inside, we just need to trim this down so that we're able to put it inside of that shadow box. So now you can see it fits inside nicely. I've also stamped a few more images that I will cut out and put on the front of the shadow box. So it kind of sits up against the window. And I drew my palm tree a little bit longer with a black pen so it would stand a little bit taller. I also stamped Waving Hello onto the front of the shadow box window right below the die cut window. So now I have taken my little beach scene panel and I just temporarily put it inside of this just to see the placement. It's not glued in there, we'll glue it in later. And I'm gluing onto the front of the shadow box our little chair and our palm tree. And I'll also stamp a few little footprints leading up to the chair. Now that we have all of the elements for the inside of our card ready, let's do the outside. I have a 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock, just a half of a piece of cardstock. Scored it down the center at 4.25, so we just have a note card here. And I'll cut off a 1/2 inch off the back. This is just like I did in the example earlier in the video. This will be the outside of our note card. Now you can decorate the front of your card however you want, but I decided to go very simple since the inside has so much going on. So I just put a few different images together from the Hero Arts June kit, stamped it with VersaMark ink, and white heat embossed it. Wanted that to be super simple so the surprise would be on the inside. So let's put our card together. I put strong adhesive on that little 1/2 inch flap, and I will tuck that in to the crease of our note card. So put it right up against it, lay it down, and then press the front of the note card down onto it. So this will start to form our shadow box on the inside of the card. Now it's time to glue our stamped panel inside of the card right behind the shadow box window. So I glued that in there and you can see it lines up nicely with the window. Now we're going to flip the whole thing over. This is the back of the card. We're going to put some strong double-sided tape on here or any type of strong adhesive, and then fold that right over onto the back of the pool piece. Now we have a 4.25 by 5.5 inch card with the shadow box inside. I created waves with a VersaMarker pen. This just creates a darker color on whatever paper you're using. Added a little waves to the front. So there's the front of the card, super simple, but when you open it, you have that beautiful scene inside with lots of dimension. I'll write my personal message on the inside of the card to the left. So this fits in an envelope just fine. It's not too bulky, it's just cardstock. There are no embellishments on it. So it'll go through the mail nicely too. So you can imagine that you can use any stamps you want from one of these shadow box cards. But I wanted to show you another example of a shadow box card using the My Monthly Hero June kit. Notice here that I use the water, but I also create islands in the background and a beach in the front. And I wanted to show you how I did that. This time I'm stamping the waves upside down, just like I stamped and layered them before, but the flat line of the waves is at the top. So you can see it's just all upside down. It's just another way you can use these stamps. So here I've already stamped the layers. Here's the last layer right on top of it. Next, I thought it'd be fun to create some islands in the distance. So I actually am stamping with the cloud stamp, but I'm stamping with the back of the stamp. So I'm putting the stamp in upside down to my MISTI, putting ink on the back of the stamp and stamping that with a green ink. And I did it with the two different cloud shapes, and it's perfect for islands off in the distance. For the sand, I scribbled down some Copic markers in a sand color. You could use any kind of coloring you want here. And I just colored right up to the edge of the waves. And I also used a darker green marker to add just the look of kind of some trees on the island in the distance. Now it's time to put the hello in the sand. This is part of that June stamp set. I stamped the hello image with VersaMark ink, and check this out. In the kit, they have sand embossing powder, and it looks so realistic. So I'll heat set that, and it looks like somebody wrote hello in the sand. For the sky, I just used a B00 Copic just to add a little bit of blue. And there we have the stamped piece for the inside of our card. Now for the outside of the card, I cut my note card and then trimmed the 1/2 inch off the side. And that's what you see here in the MISTI. I have stamped some waves, also a little sailboat, and now I'm stamping a sentiment that says, "Just a note to say." It's from this older Hero Arts stamp and die set. The set actually comes with this stamp set and the word hello die. So I stamped "Just a Note" with black ink, and then I am adding to the inside of that card our little stamped panel that we created with the beach scene. Next, I have the other piece of cardstock where I did the scoring already, just like I showed you earlier. I'm die cutting a rectangle from the window, and now I'm adding some double-sided tape to that little 1/2 inch flap. We'll tuck that inside of the card, close the card down on it, then we can flip the whole thing over, add our strong double-sided tape to the back, and then close our card. So all of the scoring and the cutting are the same on this one as I did in the last examples. I just wanted to save a little time. So here you can see how this one opens up nicely also to show the shadow box scene on the inside. I added a little more interest to the front of the card this time, but I also wanted to add more elements to the inside. So here I have stamped some clouds just like I did before, but this time I die cut them out, and I'm gluing them into the shadow box so that they pop up and create fun little shadows when you open up the card. I also added a little lawn chair to the bottom, and now I'm using a Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen to add shimmer to all of the ocean water. So here's the final card. You can see it closes up nicely and will go nicely into the envelope. And when you open up the card, you see that shadow box on the inside. This looks exactly like the British Virgin Islands, which is one of my favorite places. So it was fun to create those islands off in the distance by using the back of the cloud stamps. Just another way to get more out of the stamps that you have. Okay, my next example is also an inner shadow box card, but it opens up at the top, so it's a top folding card. And I actually think I might like this version better. This time I have an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock that I cut in half in the other direction. So I end up with 2 pieces of cardstock that are 4.25 by 11 inches long. So I'm going to show you where to score these guys to make this card. One of them you'll score right in half. That's at 5.5 inches. This will create a top folding note card, which is what I use in my videos almost all the time. But again, we need to cut a 1/2 inch off the back. So the front will be full, but the back will just have a little bit cut off. Now the other 4.25 by 11 inch piece, we have to do 3 score lines. This time we're scoring at a 1/2 inch. Then we'll score at 5.5 inches. So here's 5.5 inches here. Then the third score line is at 6 inches. So we score at 1/2 inch, 5.5 inch, and 6 inches. Let me show you all of those again. You can take a screenshot if you need to. So we scored at a 1/2 inch, 5.5, and 6 inches. And once we fold along those score lines, we have what looks like a box to go inside of our card. Again, this panel here closest to that 1/2 inch flap is where we will create our window. This time I'm using a circle die to create the shadow box window. Now I am using some images from the Hero Arts Killer Messages stamp set. This is an older stamp set, and it is just so fun and playful. I stamped one of the shark images, colored him in, and then I'm actually making his body longer by just extending it with a black pen. I will then cut that out using my scissors, and I'll also create waves this time using the new Hero Arts Wave and Sea Confetti die. This cuts a background that is great for cards. I'm going to cut along some of the waves so that I have this fun element to use for the waves inside of my shadow box. I also cut another piece for the front of my card. So I just die cut a circle from the confetti background, and I'm going to add that to the front of my card along with a little shark fin and that same just a note to say. This is all going on to the front of that note card that we created that's a little bit short on the inside. On the inside, I'm also gluing some light blue paper. Now back to our shadow box piece. On that little 1/2 inch flap, I'm putting some strong double-sided tape. I will again put this up against the fold in the card and close the card onto that adhesive. So now we can take this and flip it over and put a strong double-sided tape along the back flap too. So this is going to work just like our last card, except it's going to fold open on the top instead of the side. Now we can close that flap down onto the back of the card, and there we have our shadow box card that opens at the top. Now it's time to add all of our little elements to the shadow box part. I'm gluing some of the waves into the card, so these will kind of be set in the background. Then I have another wave piece that you can see up here on the top right. I'm actually going to put glue on the front of this, just on the front sides and bottom, and this will get glued up to the back of the window. So these will lift up when you open the card. Then we have our little shark. I'll put adhesive on the bottom of him and make him stick up on the top of the waves so that he pops up also when you open up the card. So here is the completed card. It just says "Just a Note to Say" on the front. Then when you open it, check out that fun dimension that you get and the movement you get when you open up the card. That shark looks like it just pops forward along with the waves in front of him. And I added the "Have a Killer Birthday" right below it, and that's from that same Killer Messages stamp set. So that's a more playful card. This is one that my son is going to give to his friend for his birthday, and he can just write a personal message on the inside when you open up the card towards the top. And here you can see it fits in an envelope with no problem at all. Okay, my last card is probably my favorite of all of them, and it comes together just like all the cards I did at the beginning of this video. So I'm not going to show you all the steps, just certain parts of it that are a little bit different. But I did create both of the card pieces, the outside of the card and the shadow box piece on the inside, just like I did before. See that little craft ring around the window? That I created by taking two dies that are close in size and die cutting them together from craft cardstock, and I end up with this little ring. I'm putting down some liquid adhesive around the window that I created on my shadow box piece, and then I'll lay this ring around it, and it gives just a nice little frame to our shadow box window. Now this circle that came out of that window die, I actually did my stamping on that circle, and that's what I'm going to use on the front of the card. So I feel like the circle on the front mimics the circle on the inside. I just used stamped images that I've been using throughout this video, and I created another craft ring to go around that. I created a little beach scene panel to get glued on the inside of the card. Put some strong adhesive on the little flap, just like we did earlier in the video. Put it right up against the fold of the card. Press that down. Flip that over also. Make sure everything lines up okay. Put some strong tape there. And fold this piece over onto the back of the card. You can see these are really coming together very easily, because once you get the hang of it, no problem at all. Now for the inside, I created some little images from this Hero Arts Seize the Day stamp set. I love the sentiments in this one. I glued a seagull onto the top of this little pier thingy, and then I cut a thin strip of cardstock to give more support to the back of that, and glued that on to make sure he didn't fall off. Then I will glue that onto the front of our little window. I stamped "Hey Girlfriend, See You Soon" on the inside. And now I have a few little clouds that I'm going to glue in there also. So here's the final card. It says "Just a Note to Say" on the outside. And then when you open it up, it says "Hey Girlfriend, See You Soon." And you have the images that pop up nicely. So just think you could do lots of dimension and layering in there, but I just glued things to the inside of the card and to the front of the shadow box, and you can see you get a lot of dimension with that alone. Before we go, I wanted to show you how I stamped the flap of the envelopes to match all of these cards. I inked up my stamp, put a piece of scrap cardstock up against the flap of my envelope, pressed that down, and then we have stamping on the envelope flap. This is a new Hero Arts background stamp that's perfect to go with these cards. So there you have a way to use your stamps and dies for an inner shadow box card. So much fun to make. I hope you try it. In the middle are a couple other videos you might like. I link to all of my supplies below in the YouTube description, but go to my blog for more information. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I know this was a long video, but I hope you give these a try. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.